The reason you keep attracting the wrong men has nothing to do with men. I want to talk to you about something called the queen wound. The queen wound is a fracture in identity, right? So as I've been working with women, coaching women in romantic relationship, I have uncovered something that nobody else has, period, just like the door method. And this queen wound is for women, high achieving women, specifically high achieving women who have accomplished everything except for a healthy, loving romantic relationship. So when it comes to the area of love, there is a problem meeting and marrying the right one. Now, let me explain what the queen wound is all about, right? The queen wound is this fracture when it comes to your identity, where you believe and behave. Now, you may not believe it because it's not conscious and subconscious, where you behave in a way that you feel like you have to be less than you are in order for you to sustain a romantic relationship. Now, there's places where it comes from, which we'll talk about in the next couple of videos and things like that. It definitely comes from childhood, right? But here's how it plays out. One, you shrink your excellence, right? When it comes to a man, you shrink who you are because you feel like if you show up as fully who you are, you won't be accepted. Again, that's how that queen wound plays out behaviorally, right? Another way it plays out is you literally find potential in guys who don't have potential. Like your job, you're like a fixer. Like you have to go in there and you have to fix. You have the fixing project mindset where you try to see the best in someone who hasn't even brought much to the table, and you take it upon yourself to fix. That's also being less than when it comes to a romantic relationship. The third way it shows up is that you literally live in a prison, emotional prison, where you manage the temperature of the romantic relationship by conforming, contorting, breaking, twisting, turning, and behaving in a certain way so he feels like you're easygoing. That's how it shows up behaviorally, right? So it's like living in a prison, right? So you have that prison thing where it's like, oh, let me just behave a certain way so I can be accepted and considered easygoing. That's another way you show up less than. And the last way is really subtle. This is that independent, but is an illusion. So what you did was you created this bigger than, this lifestyle that made it so that you don't need anyone. Let me say it again. You created a lifestyle that makes it so that you don't need anyone, but that's actually not true. The lifestyle you created is also a form of a prison, and you don't allow anybody healthy to come in. So to you, it feels like protection. Like I don't want the drama. I don't want, and that's understandable. But what you're missing is balance in terms of being able to also entertain a healthy, loving, romantic relationship. So while this might seem like you're being more, is actually less because you're not receiving a healthy, loving, and intimate romantic relationship. Okay? So I want you to really understand how this queen wound is expressed when you're in a relationship. Now, I believe in my heart that this is actually going to change dating for high achieving women who are ready to meet and marry the right man the first time. Now, from some of you that are the second time around, you're welcome. I always get that message like, what about me? This is going to be my second marriage or whatever. Of course, you're welcome, right? But why I say this is the most important concept you need to learn in 2026 and beyond is because what I have learned, right, from doing this work with women and also being married for 20 years is this. If you do not heal this queen wound, right, it affects you in decades. So it takes 7 to 10 years of you running around in circles and trying to figure this out over and over and over and over and over and over again, costing you so much time and effort and energy trying to figure out why is it that my life is perfect? Literally, if I ask you, you probably be like, my life is perfect, except for when it comes to men. I have great friend group. I travel. I do this. I live here. I have this car. I have all these things. But when it comes to romantic relationship, it just feels like a freaking, it feels like, what do they do in college when you have to, when they are trying to join a fraternity and it's like they're being hazed? It feels like a haze. It feels like you're being hazed. It literally feels like Fear Factor or whatever those shows are where you feel like you're going to be tortured for a minute, right? If romantic relationship feels out of control for you, I want you to know that the queen wound is at the root of what's causing this. Now, so let me explain something to you, right? So let me talk a little bit. How much time do I have? Okay, yeah, I might do a part 2 if I go on, right? Let me tell you about how it starts, right? So when you're little, right, and let's say you have a father or father figure in your life, and he doesn't have to be. A lot of people think that being wounded has to do with something so dramatic, like something dramatic happened to me. It doesn't have to be dramatic or traumatic. It just has to hurt in a way and create a tear in a way that tells you that this is how you get your needs met. Let me give you an example. If you might have a great father, treated your mother good and everything like that, but if he was inconsistent, you learn that in order for you to get the kind of love that you need to earn his presence. So you learned when it comes to a man that you have to earn their presence. So if that's you, I want you to pay attention to that. Another one is this whole unconditional love that was really warped, which is, in order for you to receive the kind of love and feel seen, that you have to perform. So if you're the kind of performer, and again, high achieving women tend to fall in this category by default, but I want you to pay attention to your particular, which one lands more for you, where you feel like, especially in immigrant communities, where if you don't get good grades, if you're not performing, if you don't win the swimming team, if you don't win the piano recital, if you don't accomplish, you're really not seen. You're just basic and average, and it's not a big deal. But when you're really celebrated is when you're performing and doing things. So you don't get seen until you perform and do things and win things, right? So if that's you, I want you to kind of take a look and see, that's where that wound was created. So what I'm describing is how was the queen wound created? So I just shared with you the first two. The, presence of a man is earned. 2, you have to perform in order to even be seen and loved, right? And the last one is the heartbreak, right? Which is when you were being fully yourself, you were rejected. You were rejected. It was just like, nope, don't want it. And so things ended badly with that. And so when it ended badly, what you took in was, being my full self is always going to be a problem. Being my full self is, it doesn't end well. So I have to contort, and I have to bend, and I have to be a certain way, because look, when I'm being my full self, that part of me is rejected. So you learn how to show up with only a version of you, not your full authentic self, your version of you, the version of you that you think that people will accept. When it comes to a romantic relationship, you do that, which is why when you're in the presence of a healthy man, and you're this way, where the version of you is what's showing up, he reads it as something is wrong and she's hiding something. She's not being authentic, she's being fake, even though you're trying your very best. This is why this is a blind spot, okay? So if you're interested, I'm doing the queen wound audits thoroughly. It's a 60-minute session, so you can identify your particular wound. Now, when you hear this, right, you're going to be able to identify the conscious wound, which is what most people can do. As soon as you hear this, play it back, you're going to be like, yep, that conscious wound, the one you're conscious of, is actually your secondary wound, because you're conscious of it. The creates the problem is the primary wound, and that's the one that is subconscious. Like you're not aware of it, and that's what is called the blind spots in layman's term. Is the blind spot, because if you can see it, you would have already been aware of it, and you would be able to address it. Is the blind spot because it seems like it's part of your personality. That's what's causing the most impact in the outcomes that you're getting in the romantic relationship. Does that make sense? So if you listen to this, right, I want you to play it again. You're going to be able to identify. You're conscious of that. The ones that you're conscious of is your secondary wound. The primary wound that's causing all the problems is the one that you're not aware of. You're not conscious of it because it seems like it's part of your personality, which is why you haven't been able to heal it or deal with it over the years. Okay? All right, take care.